Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to Torah with me, Rabbi Anibal, spiritual leader of Congregation Shari Zedek. And it's my great pleasure and honor to open my classroom to all of you one more time. So, welcome. Is the chat open? I'm surprised nobody sent a message. I can't see any messages from anybody and I'm wondering if the chat is actually working. Let's see. I think I have a way to know what's going on here. My channel. Oh, there you are. You see they're coming all the messages all at once. Hello, Roberto Franco. Jana Riedberg is here. Hi, Jana. Hello, CJR. You told me who you are once. I can't remember your name. Sorry. Please remind me. I'm doing well, Roberto. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we are going to study today a little bit about Bishevat, which we just celebrated. It's a little late, but I was on holidays. Peter Petrenkos, welcome, my friend. Good to see you here. So again, we are going to study a little bit about Bishevat. Big confusion. It's a big confusion about this date. So I wanted to make a refresher so everybody knows what's going on. Ruvain. Hello, Ruvain. Ravain. CJ Ravain. Judge Rocky Pollack. Torah at 10 a.m. in the sunshine. Oh, you're in the Pacific time. Here is 7 minutes past noon. Central time. For those of you who are tuning in from a different time zone, like Rocky Pollack. So we're going to unlock Ruvain, welcome. We're going to unlock some of the mysteries of Bishevat and see what it is. So basically what I wanted to start saying is that Bishevat is not really a holiday. It's not a festival. You know, sometimes we say Chag Sameach when it's a holiday. It's not really a holiday. It used to be something, but something that it was instituted by the rabbis for, how can I say this? For economic purposes. Amparo Goldman, welcome to the class. Welcome to the class. I was just saying that we are going to start a little bit about Bishevat and say Bishevat is not really a festival, even though in these days we wish each other happy Bishevat, Chag Sameach, but as we are going to see in a minute, there wasn't a celebration, which is something that it was put there for economic purposes because it involved part of agricultural life, let's put it that way. And it has some implications that people don't really know in these days. So I hope when we go into the details, you're going to let me know in the chat if this affects you or not. Very mysterious. What could it be, part of Bishevat, that it may be affecting you right now? You may be doing it wrong, and you don't know. Shelly Chachinov, welcome. You're not late. We're just chatting here. We haven't started studying yet. So I think let's wait one more minute. It's 12:09 Central Time. Let's start at 12:10. So it's easier, I guess, sometimes people when they replay the class to go just to the mark of the 10 minutes and that's it. Tiny Gallery Project. Very good name, but just Leah Ehrenberg. Welcome to the class, Leah. Welcome to the class. Okay, 12:10 Central Time. Let's start studying a little bit about Bishevat. So, everything starts with one verse in the Torah. This is the beginning of Bishevat. This is the most important thing you have to know about this special day in the Jewish calendar. By the way, Bishevat was Sunday night, this past Sunday. Sunday evening and Monday all day. Okay, that's the Bishevat. And so this is a little late, but again, I'm going to repeat it. Some people just joined the class. I was on holiday before, so we didn't have a Torah L'chaim before Bishevat to study and to prepare ourselves for the date. So the Torah says in the book of Leviticus, when you enter the land and plant various kinds of fruit trees, you are to regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years it will be forbidden to you and not eaten. The 4th year, all its fruits, everything, will be holy for praising Hashem. But in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit, so they will produce even more for you. I am Hashem, your God. So the Torah here details regulation associated with fruit trees. Any fruit that grows on a tree during the first 3 years, after it has been planted, is called orla. Remember that name, orla, and it is forbidden for consumption. So, in other words, if you happen to plant a tree at home, even here in Winnipeg, you are not allowed to eat those fruits for the first 4 years. And I'm not an expert in agriculture, and I'm not sure how long it takes for a brand new tree to start bearing fruits. I will guess it will depend of what kind of fruit you're planting. But in the case that you have edible fruit before the 5th year, you are not allowed to eat it. So in other words, back in the day when we had the temple, what you have to do is for the first 3 years, you can't touch it. What do you mean you can't touch it? Well, the fruit will grow. It will ripe. It will start rotting. And it will fall. And you have to let it happen for 3 years in a row. On the 4th year, you have to collect all the fruit. You have to actually physically take it out of the tree, and you have to present it to the temple. So you're not allowed to eat it yet, but you have to bring all that fruit from the new trees as an offering. And in the 5th year, you're allowed to eat whatever those trees will give you. So the interesting thing here is, how do you calculate the years? What is the mark that you say, okay, before this date is year number 1, before that date or after that date is year number 2? So there, I mean, if we will have to make a decision, we have different solution. Number 1, hello, Judy Sharak, welcome. I'm glad to be back. So solution number 1, you will say, well, depends on what date you planted the tree. And then you count years from that moment that you planted the tree. So it will be relative. It means that for every person will be different. And it's kind of not convenient if you have to make this ritual where everybody will bring the fruits of the tree to the temple. It will be all over the map. The rabbis always try to aim for consistency. And I will give you another example. One of my favorite is the date of the age of bar or bat mitzvah. That the rabbis decided that it's 13 for boys and 12 for girls. Why? Because there are some sources in the Mishnah suggesting that. But there are other sources in the Mishnah that it will say, for example, that the bar mitzvah is when a boy or a girl go through puberty. So they said you have to examine the body, basically. And if you notice that they go into puberty, that's when you do the bar bat mitzvah. And there were two conflicting sources in the Mishnaic times, which is interesting because it could go, the rabbis could have decided one way or another, but they decided to do a 13 and 12 because they like consistency. It's easier to plan. The other one, who goes first, who's second on puberty, is very relative, embarrassing. So they discarded that source even though it was a valid source. So whenever they have this dilemma of deciding how to calculate years for the trees, I'm pretty sure they have a nice discussion of how to calculate that. The other way, so if you consider the moment when the tree was planted, is relative, okay? Trust me, rabbis don't like that. The other way will be, let's use Rosh Hashanah. We already have that new year, so why don't we calculate with Rosh Hashanah? Everything before Rosh Hashanah, year number 1, after Rosh Hashanah, year number 2. Why don't we use the first of Nisan, which is the month of Pesach, which is the new year mentioned in the Torah? Could be as well. But based on the agricultural calendar, the rabbis decided that it should be a totally different date. And that date that they decided, it was called, for halachic purposes, the new year of the tree. In Hebrew, it's called Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot. Okay? So, this is coming from the Mishnah, and then it's discussed in the Gemara. So the Talmud will say it like this. There are 4 new years. Not just for the trees. So the rabbis recognize 4 new years for different purposes. First of the new year is the first of Nisan, the first day of the Hebrew month of Nisan. And the rabbi said, this is the new year for kings and for festivals. In other words, all the festivals that we have are relative to the month of Passover. New Year's for kings also. How do you know how long was a king reigned? Well, again, you can have different way of doing it. Once will be since the day of Assumption, then you count 1 year after the anniversary of that moment will be year number 1. But no, the rabbis say that doesn't matter when a person became a king. After that person became a king, when that person reaches the first day of Nisan, that is considered year 1. In the calendar, it may be less than 12 months, but nevertheless, you will say that that king was in the throne for 1 year and so forth. Okay, also for the festivals, there are many halachic considerations that they are taking based on the threshold of the month of Pesach. Second new year, according to the Mishnah, is the first of Elul, which is 1 month before Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so I said the first of Elul is the new year for the tithe of cattle. Tithe of cattle. It's a rabbinic concept. 10% of your earnings does not belong to you. And back in the day, you have to bring it to the temple. So it was a special tithing of whatever cattle you have, and you calculate that from 1st of Elul to 1st of Elul. That's your year to calculate the tithing for your cattle. Okay? But Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon, however, placed this on the 1st of Tishrei. So these 2 rabbis said, nope, we should move the tithing of the cattle for the 1st of Tishrei. We already know it. That's Rosh Hashanah. Okay, let's continue. The third one on this is the 1st of Tishrei, and the rabbis call it the new year for ears. That means that that's the day where the calendar or the year calendar changes number. So if it's the year 5782 right now, next 1st of Tishrei will be 5783. That's what they call it, the new year for ears. Okay? The rabbi said this is also the date that should be used to calculate the sabbatical and jubilee years. You know that every 7 years, the land has to rest for a full year, and every 7th cycle of 7 is the jubilee. That also is a year where the land cannot be worked, and the slaves has to be released, debts has to be forgiven. Okay, lots of consideration, but how do you calculate the years? The rabbis decided 1st of Tishrei is your threshold to calculate those things, sabbatical and jubilee as well. Okay, and for planting and the tithe of vegetables. Okay, also how much you bring to the temple is based on the 1st of Tishrei. Now there is another, the 4th new year, and there are 2 opinions. Number 1 is the first day of the month of Shevat is new year for the tree, according to the ruling of Beit Shammai. But Beit Hillel, however, placed it on the 15th of that month. 15th of Shevat. How do you say 15th of Shevat in Hebrew? Tu Bishevat. So whenever we say Tu Bishevat, that means the 15th day of the month of Shevat, and that is the opinion of the house of Hillel, that is the new year of the tree. Okay, so long story short, Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai discussed. One say 1st of Shevat, the other one say 15th of Shevat. The majority follow Beit Hillel. That's why we celebrate the new year of the tree on the 15th of Shevat or Tu Bishvat. So that's what it is. Tu Bishvat is the new year of the tree. But what does it imply? What does it mean? Well, let's continue and let's read the Gemara that is at the bottom of the page. It says, a rabbi's thought, if the fruit of a tree blossoms before the 15th of Shevat, is tithe for the outgoing year. If after the 15th of Shevat, it is tithe for the incoming year. In other words, that's your threshold when you calculate about fruit. So, and remember, because for the first 4 years, your fruit is orla, you can't eat it. How do you calculate years? You calculate it based on Tu Bishvat. Okay? If you plant a new tree, you see the first fruits before Tu Bishvat, that tree is 1 year old when you reach the first Tu Bishvat. If you reach the first Tu Bishvat and you don't see any fruit, and then you start seeing fruits after Tu Bishvat, well, the next year is going to be year number 1. That's the way we do it. Any questions so far? Well, and so let me say, that's what I said. Be aware that many of these things, even though it's not a holiday, it's not a festival, may affect you. Have you ever planted a tree on your backyard? Or did you move to a house where somebody else planted a tree? So you know that technically, according to Jewish law, it doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter where you live. You are not allowed to eat the fruits of a tree for the first 4 years. We don't have the temple in these days, so the 4th year fruits cannot be taken to the temple, but we are not allowed to eat them either. Okay, so if you plant a tree at home or you move a house which has tree, you have to find out how long is the tree. It's very common here in Winnipeg. We have the crab apple trees everywhere. I have one. My neighbor has one that is the branches are all over the fence. So by the end of the season, I have a mess on my side of the yard, and I have all the rabbits having a feast with all these apples that fall there. So it's funny. I'm saying this because we have to redo the fence. Once, when you redo the fence, you start knocking at the doors of the neighbors to see if they want to do it with you at the same time. So it's a little cheaper. You share the cost. The neighbor said, oh, by the way, I meant to tell you many years ago when you moved to your house that if you want to take any of those apples, by all means, take all the apples that go over your fence. Oh, thank you so much. Poor rabbits, now they won't have anything to eat. So I just leave them there for the rabbits. Yeah. You have to live in Winnipeg to understand what I'm talking about rabbits everywhere. When I was living in Argentina, you wouldn't see. You wouldn't see it. Peter, you said tomato is a fruit. But it is from a tree. Yeah, I don't know this. I don't know the specifics about different things, right? But it's just saying if you like planting, because I don't have anything in my backyard, nothing that gives fruits, and because I've been here for more than 5 years in this house, I'm pretty sure that the apples from my neighbors are not orla anymore. Okay. But yeah, I don't know if you have tomatoes or other things, what is the thing? Yeah, Shelley said tomatoes grow on vines, not on tree. Again, you're probably right. There are some specific things about all these halachot, all these Jewish laws that I don't know. I'm not an expert. My goal is just to generate some curiosity on all of you. Maybe you want to take it on you to investigate a little further. In fact, that's exactly what I'm talking this week on the VAR in the car. It's not been sent to the congregation yet. My understanding is it's going to be sent tomorrow, but I'm talking about curiosity and how important curiosity is in life in general. So hopefully this kind of classes, Tu Bishvat, for example, that I'm teaching, it will awaken your curiosity so you will research this a little further. That's it. It's, sometimes you know me, sometimes when I'm teaching and preaching. This is more informational, but also it's good for you to be curious and take it to the next level. Why not? So let's, now that we understand the technicalities about Tu Bishvat, let's keep reading a little more, because the problem is you can see how limited the scope of Tu B'Shvat is. In other words, if you don't have any trees at home, like me, I mean any frugal trees, Tu B'Shvat means nothing to you. There is nothing for you on this date. And that was true for the Jewish people for centuries until the pioneers of the new state of Israel decided to rediscover Tu B'Shvat and to make it some kind of celebration of the planting in the land of Israel. So they saw an opportunity to take this date that was totally forgotten, because Jews, we stopped being farmers for so many centuries in Europe, so many centuries, that these people, the first people of the modern state of Israel rediscovered Tu B'Shvat. They reimagined the date and make it all about a day of planting trees in Israel. What in reality, Tu B'Shvat has nothing to do with planting. The planting happened months before, and now is the time of the blossoming of the first fruit, so you can calculate for how long you cannot eat those fruits. Nothing to do with planting. So I'm saying this because I see, my son goes to Hebrew day school, and the way they study Tu B'Shvat is all about planting. I remember when I was in South America, it's summer there. Remember the opposite season. We used to go outside and plant a tree or plants or something. Planting. Tu B'Shvat. That's what it is. No, that's not what it is. John Johnson of David, welcome. Shelly Chachinov, yeah, it also became, Tu B'Shvat became the holiday of JNF, Jewish National Fund, also known as Keren Kayemet LeIsrael, because they echo this sentiment of the first pioneers of the modern state of Israel. But again, I'm just presenting you the halacha or the beginning of the Tu B'Shvat. Is coming from a totally different place. Now, the interesting thing here is what if, or what happened with Jews that even back in the day, they did not connect with the land of Israel in the same way. Because all these JNF things, on all the way the planting in Israel, is more a secular approach. It's not a religious approach to Tu B'Shvat. So what happened? What is the approach of religious people that they still want to keep the spirit of Tu B'Shvat alive, but they are not farmer, and they don't really connect with this secular new tradition of the land of Israel? How do they see Tu B'Shvat? Well, I wanted to share with you that sentiment as well, because I said, number one is all this connection with the land of Israel and the secular approach of planting, but there is also religious reimagination of Tu B'Shvat. And let me share a little bit of that with you. So, for example, I have an opinion from Rabbi Zadok Cohen Rabinovich of Lublin. And he said, it is not called Rosh Hashanah for the trees, but for the tree, singular. Okay, that's the original name. In this day, we call it La Ilanot, which is trees with plural, but it's a Rosh Hashanah Ilanot is the secular way is named in Israel. So, but this rabbi, remember, when you read the writings of the rabbis, you have to look for this kind of keywords. Okay, the rabbis always read between lines. For us, probably Rosh Hashanah for the tree and Rosh Hashanah for the trees, it doesn't make a big difference. It's just the same thing. We will say, okay, I understand what you're trying to tell me. But for this rabbi in particular, said, what? It's not the same. It's not the same to call the day Rosh Hashanah for the trees, plural, that to call it Rosh Hashanah for the tree. For him, it's very different. Why? Because he said, whenever the word tree as a singular is used, it always refers to Torah, which is called Etz Chaim, tree of life. You understand where it's going? Also, the Jewish people are referred to as apples hanging on the tree in the orchard. The tree here referring to God himself. What is Jewish people called apples hanging on the tree in the orchard? This is coming from the Song of Songs. Okay, so that is where this rabbi is taking that image. Let's continue. Therefore, according to this rabbi, Tu Bishvat is also the celebration of the unique and intimate relationship the Jewish people have with their God, and a day to pursue that closeness. So according to this rabbi, he will say, you want to make Tu Bishvat relevant in the 21st century, even though he said it probably, I'm not sure if he said it actually in the 19th century. What he was saying, do you want to keep Judaism relevant in the 19th century? Make the Tu Bishvat a day where you develop your closeness with God. Why? Because one way of reading New Year of the tree is the New Year for the Torah. And the other way to read New Year for the tree is a new year for God and your relationship with God. So what he's saying is, use the day of Tu Bishvat to connect with God and to connect with God's Torah. It's a beautiful thing. So as you can see here, it doesn't have to be, oh, well, sorry, I won't do that because for me Tu Bishvat is a day of connection with the land of Israel. It's not either or. It can be both. Tu Bishvat in these days could be a day to connect with JNF and make a donation to plant trees in Israel, for example. Or at the same time, it could be a day where you actually make it a day between you and God and between you and Torah. There are many attempts to try to ritualize that. And if you want to know more about it, what you can do is you can actually click on the Seder of Tu Bishvat that Dr. Rina Sektor-Elbaz published on our YouTube channel. It went live on Sunday night. It's a beautiful thing. It's a ritual. It's like a Seder. It's like a Passover Seder, but it was built around Tu Bishvat, and it involved different fruits and different meditations and different blessings. So again, it's a way to connect Tu Bishvat as a bridge between us and Torah and between us and God from a different point of view. Okay, so this is something that you should know, and you will be prepared for next year for Tu Bishvat. Now, let me go a little bit here, which is interesting. I just wanted to mention why Hillel and Shammai disagreed on the date of Tu Bishvat. So, said Beit Shammai focuses on passing the point in the season when we have experienced the majority of rainfall that will impact on the growth of the tree and its fruit. But Beit Hillel takes into consideration the warming of the air as well, for it too will have significant impact upon the budding of the fruit trees. Okay, two different things. Because remember, this was mainly written for the land of Israel. And yes, here in Winnipeg, and I can talk only about Winnipeg because that's where I live. Yeah, we're still going through days of minus 30 Celsius, minus 30 degrees Celsius in these days, with wind chills of minus 40 or so. So it's winter. But in the land of Israel is when winter starts to switch. This is the end of the extreme winter, and now the temperature start changing, days start getting longer, right? Even in these days, I just got today an email from my son's Hebrew day school that they were saying that in a couple of weeks will be the last Friday with early dismissal. And they do early dismissal because Shabbat starts so early. But they said, no, now Shabbat starting a little later, so we don't have to stop teaching on Fridays that early anymore. Why? Because it's changing. So in Israel, it's more notorious than in places like Winnipeg. So that's why they have the disagreement for this. The rabbis won't consider just a rainfall, right? Remember, in Israel, you have rain only during the winter, and then you have less and less and less rain, and then in the summer, there is no rain at all. And Beit Hillel also take that, hey, said not only the rain, but the the feeling of the air is different. Okay? But all other rabbis said, yeah, air, rain, that's not the reason. The real reason is Beit Shammai represented the wealthy class whose superior orchards began to form fruit 2 weeks earlier than the trees of the farmers with poorer fields. Very interesting. Rabbis make some politics. Never happened before. So, there is nothing about the day that is related to the planting of trees, once again. What may have served the source of the Zionist idea to reinvent this day as a day for planting trees? I already mentioned for those who don't connect to the land. Now let's mention a text about people who do connect to the land of Israel unto Bishevat. So, Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon, began, and I'm quoting from Deuteronomy, "After the Lord your God you shall walk, and unto him shall you cling." Is it possible for a human being of flesh and blood to rise up to the heavens and to cling to the divine presence, about whom it is written, "For the Lord your God is a consuming fire"? Rather, just as from the beginning of the world the Holy One, blessed be he, involved himself only in planting. You remember, this is from the beginning of the world, the book of Genesis. "And the Lord God planted in the garden of Eden, so too, when you enter into the land, involve yourself only in planting. As it's written in Leviticus, when you come to the promised land," etc. That's what I read at the beginning of the class. So, Midrash Rabbah here is make it very clear that there is a direct connection between the Jewish people and the planting of the land. The thing is, you have to remember, for many centuries, we were not allowed to own any kind of land. I'm talking about when Jews lived in Europe. Remember, Jews started to dedicate themselves to other kind of business. All the thing, what do you think is coming? All this idea that the Jews are good with money and that's all they do, the money transactions and thing. It's not because we wanted to do that in Europe. It's because the ruling governments did not allow their people to do that, and they didn't allow the Jews to own land. So what else can you do? You will do what other people don't want to do, because then. So that's how this kind of relationship between Jews and business really started. So we were taken away from the concept of being a people who will dedicate our lives to plant the land the way we used to do it in the land of Israel. But now we were not allowed to do it. So, but the Midrash Rabbah said, even though we are not allowed to do it, we should never remember that planting is a divine act. God planted the first trees in the Garden of Eden. And we know that there is something that every Jew should learn, that is that we should aim to be like God, in the sense that when Adam and Eve discovered that they were naked, God created clothing for them. So what do we learn from there? If you know someone who cannot afford clothing, you have to help clothe the naked. That's the way we call it in Jewish law. We have the obligation to clothe the naked. The same thing that the Torah said, well, when Moses died on top of the mountain, it was nobody there to bury Moses. God buried Moses, so we imitate God, and we should be sure that nobody leaves this world without a funeral. So we have to be sure that if somebody cannot afford it, that has no family, we have to take the responsibility to provide the burial for that person. All that is called imitating God, and is part of Judaism. It's an integral part of Judaism to aim to do that. So the Midrash Rabbah saying the act of planting is sacred because it's something that God started. And Tu Bishvat, because it's all about the trees, is a perfect time to remember that sacred duty. Okay? Shelley Church, what he said, so by planting in the garden, we are doing an holy act. Yes, any act of planting is a holy act according to Midrash Rabbah. That's correct. Let's continue with about the Rabbi Natan. It says, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai was known to say, if you are holding a sapling in your hand and someone says that the Messiah has drawn near, first plant the sapling and then go and greet the Messiah. That is very clear. Say that the act of planting is holier than the Messiah. I don't think you can realize how deep that statement is. I mean, if I wouldn't know who Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was, I will say that he was joking. Because this is the kind of language that we will use if we want to be sarcastic, in the sense that, yeah, sure, the Messiah. Yeah, what Messiah are you talking about? If you're planting a tree and somebody comes and tells you, the Messiah is coming, yeah, sure it's coming. Just finish planting the tree first. But because we know how serious Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was, we understand what he tried to say, that planting is very holy, to the point that equals or even sometimes surpasses the coming of the Messiah. Beautiful, beautiful concept. And then you can understand why to Bishevat, even though we don't have the tithing of the fruit or anything, or the bringing the fruit of the temple, it still has lots of room to resonate with all of us. This concept's been taken to the next level in these days, and many people are trying to take to Bishevat as a day also to connect with ecology and days of reflection on what kind of relationship we have, not just with the land of Israel or with planting, but with the world in general. Because the concept being that if we don't take care of the world, there is no planting. How can you plant in a world that it cannot sustain what you plant because the weather is changing and so forth? You know what I mean? So that's a day that many people take to reflect on healing of the world by analyzing what we are doing with the world. That's what it is. Yeah, I've seen many synagogues that they go that way. And here in Winnipeg, again, in North America, is kind of a difficult time, in the middle of the winter, when many people are not even around. They're all traveling, going for warmer climates. Yeah. Now, I wanted to also share with you that the concept of the tree appears many times in Scripture, and is always, and it has beautiful, beautiful messages every time we read about trees in Scripture. So let me show you, for example, here. I will bring an example about what I'm talking about here. In the book of Exodus, chapter 15, number 27, where it says, and they came to Elim, and there 12 springs of water and 70 date palms. So here again, the Torah is talking about trees. In this case, it's talking about 70 date palms, palm trees with beautiful dates. So the rabbis here are trying to analyze what is the message behind this mentioning of the tree. Is it just the Torah being factual and telling us what's happened there? Just nothing wrong with that. But we know that every verse of the Torah had multiple meanings. One meaning is the literal meaning, but then we also have the what is called the midrash, we have the remes, and we also have the sod, which is the Kabbalistic approach. So in this case, for example, Rashi will say the 12 springs they found corresponded to the 12 tribes of Israel, the families of the 12 sons of Jacob, and the 70 date palms were one for each of the 70 learned elders of Israel. Aha. So in this case, an elder, a learned elder in the Torah is also referred to as a tree. Why is that? Why do you think an elder is called a tree in the Torah? A learned, a sage, a wise person. Why do you think the Torah called it a tree? I would like to know your... Yeah. Hello, Cruz Kane. Welcome to the class. Any ideas? Why we call it a tree? Well, let me tell you something, because every Shabbat, Jerome Fomin, wasn't the 70 the number of nations of the world? Well, yeah, but in this case, Rashi is taking a different approach. Rashi is talking about the 70 elders, learned elders of Israel. Yeah. So when I read this, I immediately remember another piece of liturgy that we sing every Friday night. That is Tzadik Katamar Ifrach. Remember that one? Tzadik Katamar Ifrach? That is Tzadik, the righteous person. Katamar, like a palm tree, Ifrach, will flourish. Will give fruits. So it's saying that the righteous person will eventually flourish like a palm tree. Again, the connection with the tree in the book of Psalms. But in that case, what means is that sometimes it takes a long time for a palm tree, okay, long time, to grow and to bear fruits. So what the rabbis are saying in that case, and that's why the connection to the tree is so important, is that we do the right thing and we expect to see results right away. But that's not how life works. Sometimes we have to look at the tree and to realize that things take time. Even with a tree, we are so rushed in to get results that we never like to wait. And with the tree, the Torah said, no. For the first 4 years, don't do anything. Just let it fall to the ground. Why? Well, because those fruits falling to the ground will nourish the ground and will replenish it with nutrients, that it will make that the next year and the next year and the next year, the fruits will be even stronger. The fruits will be even better. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that we learn from that. Okay, that's why we say Tzadik Katamar Ifrach. We see many people that they do the right thing, right? Okay. So, Shelly, you yeah, you said it there, Shelly. Oh, I forgot to. He said the elders took years to grow and develop his knowledge, just like the tree. Also like that. Sometimes it takes years, and sometimes when you start learning, and you start learning about something. And I'm asking all of you watching the class, think about your own reality. I don't know what you do. I don't know what area of expertise is. Okay, but think about it. Think about it for a minute. Think when you first started to study about that. And sometimes we feel, oh, this is amazing. I'm ready. And you will have somebody who will say, no, whoa. You're not ready yet. Well, but I'm feeling ready, yeah, but you're not. You still have lots to learn. That's why when we are going to school, it takes many years until we get a degree. You thought about that? You don't get a degree right away. It takes many years. Even though many people think that after the first year they're ready. They're not. So it's like life is like a tree. We have to learn to be patient. And sometimes you have to do nothing. Just keep studying, keep practicing. Okay? Because that will make you stronger. It's like leave those fruits fall to the ground and it will replenish your nutrients until somebody will tell you, now you're ready. I'm saying, for example, when my son, he goes to martial arts. and he feels he's ready to go to a tournament, and then the trainers would say, no, you're not ready. You have to practice for a few years before you are even allowed to compete. Why is that? Because you feel ready, but you're not. You're not. Be patient. Be patient. Okay? So let me bring more things about the trees in our scripture. Now I want to go to the Talmud. I just show you an example from the Torah, and now I want to bring an example from the oral law, from the Talmud. This is from Masechet Tanit, page 5b, and it will say, a man was traveling through the desert, hungry, thirsty, and tired, when he came upon a tree bearing luscious fruit and affording plenty of shade, underneath which ran a spring of water. He ate of the fruit, drank of the water, and rested beneath the shade. When he was about to leave, he turned to the tree and said, Tree, oh tree, with what should I bless you? Should I bless you that your fruit be sweet? Your fruit is already sweet. Should I bless you that your shade be plentiful? Your shade is already plentiful. That a spring of water should run beneath you? A spring of water runs already beneath you. There is one thing with which I can bless you. May it be God's will that all the trees planted from your seeds should be like you. And here comes another beautiful teaching of the tree, and it's the fact that every fruit coming from the tree has the potential to create another tree like the original tree. And this is also compared to ourselves, in the sense that that's what we want for our children, in the same way that we are the product of the education that we receive from our parents, and the love, the time, dedication. Like a tree, now we have that potential in us that we can pass to the next generation. Another thing that comes up when we celebrate Tu Bishevat year after year is the reminder that yes, the tree is compared with the Torah, the tree is compared with God, but the tree is also compared with each one of us, and the potential to pass our seeds, our DNA, and our qualities, our values to the next generation. But as a tree, you have to nurture it. The tree, it won't just happen. You have to nurture it. So that's the thing. And this kind of multi-generational connection for trees, and it's very important because we know that there are many things in this world that it cannot be finished by one generation. Sometimes we need multiple generations to do something. The perfect example that I can think is Judaism. Judaism is not a one generation thing. Judaism is something that it had to be kept alive by multiple generations, and by one generation learning from the generation before. If it's just a one generation thing, then Judaism is called to dry out and die. It's up to us to keep Judaism alive the same way that it was up to our ancestors to do it. Now it's our time, but it's also a connection with the message of the tree there. Let me give you an example. It's also from the Talmud, Masechet Ta'anit, page 23b now. It says, one day, Honi Ameagel, you know Honi Ameagel? It's a wonderful character of the Talmud. He was a miracle worker. He will make these deals with God. He will make a circle around him. He will sit inside, and he will request something from God, and he said, God, until you don't grant my request, I won't move from inside this circle. And the legend said that his requests always happened. It was fantastic. So it said, one day Honi Ameagel, who once prayed for rain during a drought and refused to move from within a circle until the rain came, which it did. By the way, Meagel means the one who draws circles. Okay. One day, this guy Honi Ameagel was journeying on the road, and he saw a man planting a carob tree. He asked him, how long does it take for this tree to bear fruit? The man replied, 70 years. We are talking about 3 or 4 years now. For this tree, 70 years. He then further asked him, are you certain that you will live another 70 years? The man replied, I found ready grown carob trees in the world. So as my forefathers planted these for me, so I too plant these for my children. Wow, what a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful analogy here. So Honey sat down to have a meal, and sleep overcame him. As he slept, a rocky formation enclosed upon him, which hid him from sight, and he continued to sleep for 70 years. When he awoke, he saw a man gathering the fruit of the carob tree, and he asked him, are you the man who planted the tree? The man replied, I am his grandson. Thereupon he exclaimed, oh, it is clear that I slept for 70 years. But you can see here the morale of the story of Honey, and how many of the things that we find in this world are there because somebody else before us did it. And it's great for us to enjoy it. We have all the right to do it. But we also have the obligation to create something so the future generation will also have something to enjoy. And again, during Tu Bishvat, and because of all the connection with the tree and the land, Tu Bishvat became a day of reflection on what we do to the world, in the same way that the world we're enjoying right now is in part, because there are many things that we cannot control, but it's in part the result of the products of things that they were done for generations before us. So it's a time of reflection on how whatever we do will or will not affect the world in a way that they will affect the future generations. And that is something that is we always have to remember, but it's better if we have time in our calendar to build a ritual around that. Okay? I wanted to finish the class with one more reflection, one more text about Tu Bishvat. And let me do this. It says, Tu Bishvat marks the turning point of the winter season. Even though there are many weeks of winter still ahead of us, tell me about it, there is no doubt that the season is turning. The days are becoming longer, that's true. The sun higher and brighter in the sky, and the advertisement for Pesach accommodation more urgent and frenzied in tone. Well, not in Winnipeg, but I can believe if you live in places like Israel or New York, that's probably true. Tu Bishvat is thus not only a new beginning for the fruits and the trees in the land of Israel, it is meant to signal a new beginning for us as individuals and as people and as Jewish society. This is beautiful because it said, yeah, it's lots of connection to Israel, but what's for us? Diaspora Jews. There is something that we can get from Tu Bishvat that will inspire us right here, right now. Let's keep reading. One of the many amazing patterns of Jewish history, among others, has been the ability of Jewish society to renew itself as the circumstances of time demanded. Every generation, and certainly every century of history, possess age-old problems coupled with new twists and wrinkles. How to meet those challenges is the responsibility of Jewish leadership of every generation and time. Tu Bishvat comes to remind us of this omnipresent responsibility, facing the present and the future with realistic and yet inspirational tactics and solutions that deal with our current angst and problems. And again, I don't think we need an excuse to think about that because we all know the challenges that we have as a Jewish people. But if we have a day, specifically one day a year, that we can dedicate to answer all those questions, it's even better. And Tu Bishvat gives us that opportunity. When we also the news of what happened in Texas and the hostage taking and everything, well, it's a reminder that we still have issues, unsolved issues that affects us all everywhere we are. Everywhere we are. It's not a time to despair. On the contrary, it's a time to accept the challenge and to renew our compromise with finding a path towards the future together. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you. And so again, thank you so much everyone for coming to today's class. The chat was very quiet today. It was very interesting. You guys were, unless that I skipped and that my system skipped some messages, very quiet, but I hope that means that you were paying attention and you understood everything that I had to say. Because what I learned is, when you finish saying something and there are no questions, that means that people really understood everything, or they understood nothing. That's why they are not questioned. So, well, thank you so much, Rocky. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this class. Torah is back. So I hope to see you next week. Stay safe. Have a wonderful day. And I hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone. Oh, by the way, remember, if you miss part of the class, it's going to be restreamed tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. Every time. I always do Torah L'chaim at noon on Thursday, and then 8 p.m. Central Time is repeated. So you have another opportunity. Okay? So thank you, everyone. Jerome, Judy, Jana. See you soon. Bye.